Hello, this is Marc from My Keys to Music. In this video, we talk about the Farfisa organ, which is a transistor organ from days gone by. However, we're lucky today to have the ability to emulate this organ either on an Electro keyboard or a Nord stage keyboard, such as the Stage 2, the Stage 3. But I'll be demonstrating all of this on the Nord Stage 4. And in one song, I use the piano and the Farfisa together. So with that in mind, I'd like to tell you how I created this video. It's actually an excerpt from the course called Master the Nord Stage 4, which is a brand new course that I'm about to release on my main website called mykeystomusic.com. If you go there, you'll find a complete masterclass for the Nord Stage 4 and many other Nord keyboards as well that I've done over the years. It includes over 100 lessons, and it allows you to learn from a video tutorial standpoint everything about your keyboard, but then I also sprinkle in a lot of practical examples and song excerpts and some experience from my 20-30 years playing keyboards in live situations, and I bring all of that to you so that you can not only learn the mechanics of the keyboard, but when you might apply something and how it works and all of that. All right, so without further ado, here's an excerpt from the course, Master the Nord Stage 4. It features the Farfisa organ, and we're going to be demonstrating 3 famous songs with the Farfisa so you can get an idea of, oh, so that's what this organ sounds like, and that's where it might be used in my day-to-day playing or the cover tunes that you might do. And as always, feel free to leave a comment if you have other questions or you wanted to get more information. By the way, if you're interested in downloading these sounds for your Nord Stage 4, I make them available on my Patreon page, as well as anyone enrolled in Master the Nord Stage 4. Thanks for joining me and enjoy the lesson. We continue our journey here with the Nord Stage 4 and the organ section. This time we concentrate on the Farf model, also known as the Farfisa. The typical buzzy sound of this vintage instrument is one of the most distinct and easily recognizable organ sounds ever created. Yet it is actually possible to get quite a wide range of sounds out of the instrument. Note that the voices aren't supposed to replicate the instruments they are named for, but rather to describe a basic tonal characteristic of the voice, such as flute equals soft, oboe equals reedy, and trumpet equals brassy, etc. The labels used for the Farf drawbar registers are printed on the upper row above the drawbar LEDs or drawbars, located here. The drawbars act as on-off switches or register selectors when the Farf model is selected. Instead of drawbars, the original instrument used rocker switches for selecting instrument voices, in reality different filter settings, in various footages or octave ranges. The drawbar LEDs 5 through 8 are lit up for an active voice, and drawbar LEDs 1 through 4 are lit up for a deactivated voice. Pulling a drawbar more than halfway out will activate that register. So depending on the program view we're looking at, and we're about to take a look at this here on the Nord Stage 4 directly, the display will show the current selected drawbars. And the table here shows the original register name, so you can get an idea of how the original instrument was intended to be and how that correlates with the drawbar settings as you set them on the Nord Stage 4. So we can see here, drawbar 1 is bass 16, that's the name of the voice. The panel name is bass 16, and you can follow along this whole chart here to discern that correlation. So as we take a look at this illustration, it shows the pitch interval between each voice when the key C3 is played. Though some voices have the same pitch, they differ in tonal character. Similar to how we learned how to do it with the Vox, you can push on the C3 key and see where the established drawbars map to. The original instrument has 2 basic vibrato modes, light and heavy, with different rates for each mode. Then you have various choices to pick from, choices for V1, V2, and C3, which are the ones modeled after the original instrument. Now let's take a moment and listen to the drawbar settings from an original Farfisa, here courtesy of YouTube. Bass 16. Strings 16. Flute 8. Oboe 8. Trumpet 8. Strings 8. Flute 4. Strings 4. 2 2/3. Bass 16, flute 8, flute 4. Vibrato on, fast. Add heavy. All right, let's go take a look at some of these options on the Nord Stage 4 directly. Okay, on the Stage 4, we're going to navigate to an empty sound, turn off the piano, turn on the organ engine, and adjust it so that it's on the Farfisa. And very important, turn off the rotary speaker. I find that most of the songs that I've worked with so far with the Farfisa, none of them have the organ rotary speaker on. And it could be that they didn't use a rotary speaker that much with the Farfisa organ, in the same way that they did with the B3. The B3 is sort of like goes together, and on the Farfisa, not so much with the rotary speaker. So just out of the box, I'll turn off all my drawbars or push them all so that they're in the up position, because here on this organ, it's a 1-2 combo. There's no in between. It's either on or off. So with all of them up in that off position, you won't hear anything. And then as I bring in each drawbar, you should be able to hear them. All right, and you can experiment with that on your own just to get to know the personality traits of these drawbars. We do have the vibrato as well. And the vibrato, as it was described by the manual, only talked about vibrato 1, vibrato 2, and chorus 3. But in fact, we have 4 choices. We have vibrato 1, vibrato 2, chorus 2, and chorus 3. So those are the only 4 options, these outer 4 options. And it's been like that on the Nord keyboards for a while, so I'm not exactly sure why they describe it the way they do. I mean, we do have a vibrato 1, 2, we have this extra C2, which was not mentioned in the manual, but it could be that they added this vibrato, but it wasn't really part of the original instrument, but they did mention C3. So anyway, that's just something to be aware of. C3 is a really drastic vibrato, but it could come in handy here and there. So I've got a couple sounds here, a few sounds actually, doctored up. Here's a famous song by Todd Rundgren called Bang on the Drum All Day. So what do we have here? Looking just at the lights, on, off, on, off, on, off. So, and no vibrato. I do have a little bit of EQ added to this. You probably don't see it here, but I added some high-end EQ for the most part. I also added some compression, which can really bring out the volume on your organs. The organs tend to be on the quiet side, and it could be that way on purpose because they figure, okay, if you had more drawbars and the rotary speaker and the drive on, that would be equal volume to, let's say, something in the piano engine. But when you're only using a few drawbars, the organ tends to be a little quiet, so I sometimes enhance it with just adding a little bit of this compression, which is highly effective here on the Nord Stage 4. 7.5 is what I ended up with, so about 3/4 up on the dial. Not quite, 2/3. And then we have some reverb happening here, which again you can't really see, but I've got a room reverb, bright setting, and the dial is 4.3, so somewhere around there. No other effects for this basic Farfisa sound, and you'll find that the Farfisa sounds, you can kind of get away with coming with something close and it ends up sounding convincing. So here is the sound. Okay, for this song you want to keep the notes kind of short. We have a left-hand part. And a right-hand part. And now with the music. Incidentally, this is a very difficult sound to reproduce in the actual synth engine, so it's nice that we have these unusual, hard-to-make sounds already baked in on the organ engine. So Bang on the Drum All Day is a great example of that. Now we come to a selection, a song named Benny and the Jets from Sir Elton John. We don't think of this song as an organ-based song, we think of it as a piano. And after all, it does start with the piano, ends in the piano, and there's piano throughout the entire song. So why are we talking about the Farfisa? Well, if you listen closely, at the end of this song, there is an actual Farfisa-like sound, and I've doctored that up here. First, I will get to the organ, but let's just take another 30 seconds to talk about the piano, because I think you'll find this particularly interesting. This piano is a combination of A, which is a white grand extra large, and B, which is a bright grand medium, with the volumes as such. I've also added a little EQ, and a healthy amount of reverb. And I mention it only because if you are going to do this song, it's not just about the Farfisa at the end, it's actually primarily about the piano throughout. So let me just play you a quick snippet of this so you get an idea. Interesting, he starts his live album with a random F major 7th chord before he even starts the song. And then there's a pause. It's almost as if he's cueing the band or testing his sound on the piano, but it's always remained there on the recording, and I always found that fascinating as to exactly why. But it definitely cues Benny and the Jets, especially if you're an Elton John fan, you know exactly what comes next. And then it's more of this. So that's the beginning, and you can use that sound for the piano solo and all the stuff in between. And it just makes great vamping sounds too. Then the ending still has that piano playing, but then alongside of it comes the Farfisa, with its setting of on, off, on, off, on, off. Again, focus on just the lights, not the drawbars when it comes to the Nord Stage 4. And then it sounds like this. Or, I don't have that rehearsed, but it is that. It's that sound. And notice how I tighten the reverb on that. There's almost no reverb because you kind of want it to cut through. Doesn't necessarily need to have a lot of reverb. So that's happening along with the actual piano part. So another small point to bring up about that is if you are going to play Benny and the Jets and you want both sounds, and you are lucky enough to have a guitar player that can play keyboards or somebody that can play keyboards, and you have another low-cost controller keyboard, you could take that controller keyboard, something as small as this would work, or a little bigger, like a 37 key, whatever you want, MIDI it from out to in, and use the auxiliary option on your Nord Stage 4. You'd have both engines on at the same time, but the organ would be dedicated for the auxiliary part. That would enable the keyboard player to have the sound coming from the Nord Stage 4, that wonderful, hard-to-duplicate Farfisa sound, while you're playing piano, holding the main parts for both the left and right hand throughout the whole song. Now keep in mind I have a dedicated lesson for auxiliary keyboard, and we take this at a snail's pace. So that means you can play along while taking advantage of that great Farfisa sound coming from an external keyboard, because I believe you're going to need two keyboard players to play this entirely the way it was on the album. So that's just a little tip. Auxiliary keyboard, again, we have a dedicated lesson for that, and we go over where the MIDI settings are and some of the other things that to be aware of. So that's Benny and the Jets, Farfisa at the end. And another one from Elton John, Crocodile Rock, with the Farfisa through most of the song, including the solo part, but I do enhance it with a synth here, which you'll see in a minute, and I've picked out a piano that I think is pretty close. Here's my interpretation of Crocodile Rock.